Last week, Apple took all of us by surprise and announced a bunch of new MacBook Pros ahead of their June WWDC keynote. Now, you may not have heard about this until now, because it was a pretty quiet and minor refresh. But their highest-end configuration has really stirred up a lot of controversy in the tech community, as it contains a 9th generation Intel Core i9 octa-core CPU with Radeon Pro Vega 20 dedicated graphics and 32 gigs of RAM. Now, last year's 6-core models thermally throttled. And if those did, how on earth did Apple manage to fit an 8-core CPU into the same chassis? Well, I bought one of these outrageously expensive computers to test that very question, and the results are interesting. This video is made possible by Dashlane, the simple and secure way to manage your passwords. Learn more through the link below. This is now the 4th refresh that we've received of the ultra-thin design introduced by the 2016 MacBook Pro. And to say that this has been a controversial generation is generous. The Touch Bar has been lambasted as an expensive, gimmicky, and ill-advised replacement for the laptop's function key row. The design has been criticized as being thin just for the sake of being thin, with poor thermal performance. And the removal of common ports requires the frequent use of dongles. I have been critical of the design since its release, and I still believe it to be one of the worst laptops that Apple has made in decades. However, all of these questionable design choices pale in comparison to Apple's butterfly keyboard design. In case you've been living under a rock for the last several years and haven't heard, it is a bad keyboard. Now, I'm not talking about the actual key feel, because while I don't prefer it, a lot of people do, and that's really a matter of opinion. No, I'm talking about the awful, awful reliability of this thing. Now, you may not have had a problem with yours, knock on wood, but many, many, many people have. Debris gets underneath the keycap and will either register a double key press or no key press at all. Apple's own support documentation reads like an Onion article telling you to flip your laptop upside down and to spray it with compressed air. If you're lucky, you can dislodge it, and if you can't, you're in trouble, because it's not like the old MacBook Pro where you can just pop the keycap off and fix the debris underneath. No. If one of these keys goes bad, Apple has to send the entire laptop into one of their repair centers to replace the entire bottom half of the computer. This issue has been so common with so many people that Apple opened a free keyboard replacement service program for 4 years from the laptop's purchase date. Every year since 2015, when the keyboard was first introduced, Apple has made small changes year over year to improve reliability. But year after year after year, the reliability improvements don't seem that notable, and a lot of people end up with broken keys. This year is no different, as Apple told Joanna Stern of the Wall Street Journal that it has made a change to the material in the keyboard mechanism. Now, the fine folks at iFixit have indeed confirmed a number of very minor changes. However, whether or not they're substantial enough to improve reliability remains to be seen. On my 2019 unit, the key travel feels pretty similar to my 2018 MacBook Pro, but while a tad quieter, it also feels a little mushier. In my opinion, the 2019 MacBook Pro just feels worse to type on. Funnily enough, despite the alleged changes, the new MacBook Pro was added to the extended keyboard replacement program on the day it went up for sale. Now, maybe this is Apple just trying to say, don't worry, we'll take care of you if you buy one of these things. But to me, it kind of seems like well, we really haven't fixed this keyboard, it's probably gonna break, so here you go. But who knows? You know what they say, 4th redesign's a charm. Now, if you can get over that pretty major hurdle, it's worth talking about performance, because 8 cores in a laptop is pretty bananas. When you run a quick full system benchmark like Geekbench, the scores look insane. They actually outperform my base model $5,000 iMac Pro, and pretty handily at that. But when performing a more realistic CPU-heavy benchmark, like the new Cinebench R20, you really start to see the MacBook Pro fall behind its desktop brethren. Now, it still performs nicely, but there are even Windows laptops out there with the exact same CPU that completely obliterate the MacBook Pro in benchmarks. So that means there's thermal throttling, right? Well, no. I mean, at least not by definition. Every chip has a TDP rating, which states the maximum heat a computer chip can use, measured in watts. They're rated such that at the base clock speed, the chip will remain underneath its TDP limit. Now, when there's additional power, current, and thermal overhead, the CPU may turbo boost to higher frequencies momentarily for short bursts, which is then followed by a cooldown period as this generates a lot of additional heat. For brief workload stuff, this works great, and the MacBook Pro peaks as high as 5 GHz. However, After just a few seconds, especially on all-core workloads, the MacBook Pro settles in at around 2.5 gigahertz, or just above its rated clock speed. Now, unlike Linus Tech Tips discovered with the 2019 iMac, the CPU package in the MacBook Pro always draws at or above its 45-watt TDP, which is good. Well, I mean, it means that the only reason it can't go faster is because it's too hot. It's not thermal throttling because it doesn't ever dip below its base frequency, which is by definition what thermal throttling is, but it is still thermally constrained. So I exported one of my videos in Final Cut Pro 10 3 times inside of my 70°F, 21°C studio. And then I took the average of those 3 times and made that my control. Then, like the good old days, I took my MacBook Pro and stuck it inside of a freezer to run the same tests, which, by the way, you should absolutely not do, because if you're not careful, you can induce condensate inside of the computer, condensation, electronics. They don't play nicely together. But I did it anyway, and the results were absolutely the same. That doesn't make any sense, right? Because surely a 45°F or 24°C ambient temperature change should make a difference, right? Well, I was confused, but then I noticed something. When I pulled the laptop out of the freezer after the video export, the fans were spinning pretty quietly. Very unlike the same test that I ran inside my studio, where the fans were spinning so loudly I thought the laptop was about to take flight. So what does this mean? Well, it seems to me that Apple prioritizes fan noise above all else. Apple will run the CPU as hot as it possibly can, and with the clock speed not throttling, but as close to base clock as possible, so long as it can keep the fans quiet. This is a very frustrating design decision on Apple's part, but luckily there are third-party utilities that can let you set your own fan curves and manually adjust the fan speed. So I put both of the fans at full speed, put it back in the freezer, ran the video export test again, and oh baby, it was way faster, as it should have been. So I ran the room temperature studio tests again at full fan speed, hoping the results would improve slightly, but sadly, they didn't. Given Apple's historically awful thermal paste performance, I figured I would tear down the laptop to see what was inside. The thermal design appears to be identical to last year's hexa-core MacBook Pros, which thermally throttled. So why don't these? They have the same blower fans, the same copper heat pipes, the same tiny radiators. I actually think it comes down to the thermal paste. The paste that Apple has used in the past is dry and flaky. Its performance wasn't as good as traditional thermal interface material, but many have told me it's engineered to last for a long time without reapplication, which, given how annoying these laptops are to take apart, is probably a good thing. But this time around, they went with a slightly gooier paste, and they also didn't grossly over-apply it, which they have been doing for years. So it might dry out in 7 or 8 years, but for now, it works really, really well. Great improvement here, Apple. I cleaned up the old thermal paste and painted some silicone conformal coating around the CPU. That's right, we're trying out liquid metal. Now, liquid metal is not only thermally, but also electrically conductive. So you need to be very careful to not over-apply and to make sure that the area around where you're going to use it is masked off, just in case some of it rolls around. It is a liquid after all. I ran the benchmarks again, and whoa, wait, what? So yeah, the machine did perform a little better, but it still hit a thermal ceiling. All the liquid metal did was fend off those temperatures just a little bit longer, by about a minute. And so funnily enough, whether or not I was doing a 5-minute export or a 20-minute export, I was only getting about a 1-minute advantage using liquid metal. Now, there is an understated benefit to doing this in that the fan speed automatically stays a little bit quieter since it's a more effective conductor, but liquid metal also has a lot of downsides, and so I'm going to just be replacing it with the standard thermal paste. So Apple, good job! Kinda. I mean, what we really want is an entirely redesigned laptop that fixes all of the crap that we hate about this current generation. And look, Apple is obviously working on it, but this is a great stopgap for those that need the extra power now. As someone who has been waiting 6 freaking years for a new Mac Pro, thank you, Apple, for finally refreshing your Macs with new CPUs as they become available, even if that means that every single refresh isn't going to be groundbreakingly different or innovative. For those of us that need the extra power now, this is a great little laptop. For everyone else, don't buy this machine. Save your money and wait for the next one. Save your money and buy Dashlane Premium. These ads used to be so easy when I could just tell you that Dashlane was a password manager. And Dashlane still does that better than any other password manager on the market, with autofill capabilities on desktop and mobile, their one-click password changer, and more. But Dashlane is so much more than that now. Dashlane Premium includes a fast, multi-country VPN for every device you own, which really comes in clutch when you're traveling abroad or when using unknown Wi-Fi networks. They also offer dark web monitoring, which not only serves to inform you when data breaches occur on the services that you're using, but if and what data of yours has been exposed or is being sold online. Dashlane saves you time and offers peace of mind at an unbeatable price. Try Dashlane today for free by going to the link below, and when you decide to sign up, save 10% off your purchase by using the coupon SnazzyLabs at checkout. Well folks, that's all for me. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you didn't, that other button seems to work okay too. Get subscribed for more awesome tech videos like these, but most importantly, and as always, stay snazzy.